U.S. Special Counsel John Durham released his long-awaited report yesterday. Durham investigated the origins of the FBI's probe into the Trump campaign for years. His report concludes that the Justice Department and FBI failed to uphold its self-proclaimed mission of strict fidelity to the law, among other deficiencies. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more on the report and reactions from lawmakers.
Special Counsel John Durham's report states the FBI's handling of the probe was seriously deficient. He found the FBI rushed to open their initial investigation based on unvetted intelligence when the Bureau set out to determine if the Trump campaign worked with Russia to influence the 2016 presidential election, and didn't interview those connected to the information. He also says agents had no actual evidence of collusion and were unable to corroborate a single allegation from their sources. The 306-page report contrasts this with how the department treated other politically sensitive investigations at the time, including an inquiry into the Clinton Foundation that was virtually frozen in the lead-up to Election Day. The FBI responded to the report, saying the conduct it noted was under previous leadership, and that the Bureau has since put dozens of corrective actions in place. Durham did not recommend any department guideline or policy changes in his report, instead saying the answer lies in renewed fidelity to existing rules. Former President Trump reacted on Truth Social, saying the American public was scammed and that Durham's conclusions prove the FBI should never have launched its Trump-Russia investigation. Mr. Trump called for accountability from Democrats and former FBI Director James Comey. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise demanded consequences. The congressman tweeted that the report reveals former President Obama's FBI had zero actual evidence of collusion when they began their investigation. House Republican Conference Chair Elise Stefanik echoed the sentiment, calling the FBI probe a false smear manufactured and paid for by Trump's political opponents. She says the report has renewed her commitment to ensuring those involved are held accountable and face criminal prosecution. Congressman Jim Jordan stated he's reached out to the Justice Department to have Durham testify before the House Judiciary Committee next week. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
Joining me now to discuss this report is Mark Ruskin, retired FBI special agent and former assistant district attorney in Brooklyn, New York. Good to have you, Mark. Can you please explain in simple terms first what the report found out about the FBI investigation and what it means?
Well, good to be here. Thanks for inviting me. The Durham report seems to be highly critical of the way the FBI handled the case, in that there was apparent political and ideological influence in the decisions that were made. The FBI, as any national police that in a democracy, has to be completely independent and objective in its handling of investigations. And based on the Durham report, it appears that the Bureau did not act in an independent and an objective manner.
Now, did it also find law breaking? Can we expect criminal prosecution, or what can we expect there?
Well, the report, from what we know so far, seems to have stopped short of actually bringing criminal charges, although there's a gray area involved where one could certainly argue that criminal charges could be brought, for a number of charges, to include lying to the FBI by certain witnesses, and failure to adhere to certain criminal statutes in the pursuit of this investigation.
And what will this mean for former President Donald Trump now moving forward?
Well, it can certainly provide a basis for an argument that the case against him was based on politics and not on actual wrongdoing. It will bring the possibility of strong arguments by Trump and also by congressional investigators that the FBI was essentially acting without a proper basis, without the foundation for the acts that it took. Durham has essentially said that the case should never have gone as far as it did, but should have been shut down once the Bureau realized that it did not have sufficient predication for an investigation of this nature.
Now, with the report out now, what's going to happen next? What do you expect to happen next week?
Well, I think that the report's going to be used by congressional investigators to further support the ongoing investigations into alleged wrongdoing by the Bureau and by the Department of Justice. The FBI has responded to the Durham report, stating that a number of corrective actions have been put into place to prevent this kind of activity going on in the future, such as with the FISA warrants. However, the Department of Justice's Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, has recently criticized the FBI for a failure, according to him, and he represents Justice internal investigations, a failure by the Bureau to correct the nature in which it's obtaining FISA warrants. So there's a good basis to argue that the corrective actions have really not been put into place at this time to date, and it will need to happen if the Bureau is to return and to regain the respect and trust of the American people.
Well, thank you so much. Very interesting insights. Mark Ruskin, thanks. Always good to have you.
Thanks for having me here.
The IRS has removed a whistleblower and his entire investigative team from its multi-year tax fraud investigation of Hunter Biden. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on this developing story.
The whistleblower's attorney say the move was done at the orders of the Justice Department. Their client is a criminal supervisory special agent who has supervised the Hunter Biden probe since early 2020. The whistleblower hasn't publicly identified Biden as the subject of the case he alleges is being covered up, but congressional sources have confirmed it. In April of this year, IRS Commissioner Daniel Werfel appeared before the House Committee on Ways and Means.
I can say without any hesitation, there will be no retaliation for anyone making an allegation or a call to a whistleblower hotline.
But the whistleblower's attorneys say the move is clearly retaliatory and may also constitute obstruction of a congressional inquiry. They add that their client has a right to make disclosures to Congress and is protected from things like receiving a significant change in duties, responsibilities, or working conditions. Attorney Tristan Levitt on Real America's Voice.
And we're going through the process that is absolutely the way Congress intended it to be followed. And
Levitt promised to react.
We will be very vigorously watching to ensure that there is no further retaliation of our client.
The whistleblower's attorneys say the experienced investigators have worked the relevant case for years and are now experts on it. They say their removal is exactly the sort of issue their client intended to blow the whistle on to begin with. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Treasury Secretary Yellen reaffirms the U.S. could run out of money to pay bills by early June. In 2023, an average of almost 67 million Americans per month will receive a Social Security benefit. We spoke with experts to see if your Social Security checks could be impacted should the U.S. default. NTD's Colin Fredrickson tells us more.
Social Security could be affected because Republicans and Democrats can't agree on the debt ceiling. Basically, the federal government has borrowed so much money that it's hit the maximum amount allowed by law. So it may need to borrow even more in order to pay off its obligations, including Social Security payments to retirees.
The Democrats and the Republicans, we've got one side that's saying they want to cut spending, and the other side is saying, hey, we're not willing to accept any spending cuts. And they're throwing Social Security in there as if that's going to be the thing that gets sacrificed.
Devin Carroll is a financial planner at Carroll Advisory Group. He runs a YouTube channel dedicated to Social Security education. Carroll believes Social Security payments won't be affected at all. He says that a 1996 law called the Social Security Escape Clause would continue the payments. The law activates the Social Security Trust Fund if the government defaults.
Assets in the trust fund can be used to fund benefit payments. And considering that there's about $2.9 trillion in the trust fund right now, and the annual outlays of the Social Security program are about $1.2 trillion, Well, there's enough in there for the politicians to argue for a couple of years on this.
The Social Security Trust Fund has been funded over the years by excess contributions to the system. However, many see problems with the fund. If the government defaults, then the fund, which holds government securities, may not be able to fully pay everyone. So Social Security payments are at real risk of being delayed or reduced. But the government has never fully defaulted before.
The Democrats and Republicans are negotiating over a bill to raise the debt ceiling. And in the past, that has always happened. So we should expect both sides to negotiate probably right up to the deadline before striking a deal.
Jason Sorens is a senior researcher at the American Institute for Economic Research. He also says the Biden administration is more likely to furlough federal workers than to cut Social Security, which he calls political suicide. Social Security recipients make up a large portion of voters. Colin Fredrickson, NTD News.
A rich experience for coffee lovers. In Paris, residents and tourists sampled brews from across the globe and learned more about the art of preparing the beverage. NTD's France correspondent David Vives has the details.
Coffee is a gourmet thing for the exhibitors and visitors at the Paris Coffee Fair this weekend. An occasion for tourists and Paris locals to explore 62 exhibits, all with a unique perspective on coffee. Among them, producers present their coffee from different regions of the globe. Rosario Pajuelo is one of them. She says over 220,000 families make a living from the coffee bean harvests in Peru. They are small producers looking to reach sellers across the globe.
Peruvian coffee is mainly produced in altitude between 1,700 meters and 2,000 meters above sea level. The coffee plant grows in the shade of other trees. It's harvested by hand and has that typical Peruvian aroma, a tangy flavor coming from the Arabica family.
This sales director says coffee distribution is very different today compared to years ago. The customers need transparency, and producers look for a fair price to export the beans.
Many producers today give up coffee production because of price issues, often because the price of the weight of the coffee is not sufficiently paid or not sufficiently remunerated in relation to the work done. There is also a real social issue of converting, of paying the right price for coffee to allow producers to continue their activity. And so this sourcing work involves field work, meetings.
Many exhibitors feature their take on how to roast coffee. According to chef Alain Ducasse, roasting is like cooking, since the coffee bean is roasted to change its structure and release the aromatic oils that give it its flavor. This Normandy roaster specializes in coffee from Nicaragua, Tanzania, and Indonesia. He says he has to perfectly know where the coffee is from to give customers the best experience.
We need to have this knowledge. We need to trace the coffee in order to be able to roast it better. Once it's roasted, the idea is to create a delicious flavor, to develop the aromas so that our coffee shop customers can enjoy it.
Coffee is also a playground for artists, like this self-styled latte master able to draw seahorse on a cup, or these visitors who became artists for a day using coffee to paint. After Paris, the coffee fair is traveling to other cities. It'll be in New York from October 6th to 8th this year. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
Good to have you back. In today's Inspired News, we bring you the story of a little gentleman. A proud mom of 4 is sharing how her son is developing respect for women through his kind, caring relationship with his 3 little sisters. Here's the story.
Are you gonna try help to make them happy?
Yeah.
Yeah? What are you gonna do?
Give them my toy.
37-year-old Anna Brown is a single stay-at-home mom and content creator who came to the United States from Russia 12 years ago. She has 2 sets of twins, Sebastian and Elizabeth, age 5, and Vivian and Francesca, age 3.
I feel like they all share a very special bond, but even more special, the bond between Sebastian and his own twin sister. He always gives her something even more special or a better toy.
The mother said she noticed Sebastian being kind to his sisters when he was a toddler. For example, he would give his own milk bottle to his twin sister when she was upset. He would also share his snacks and give his sisters a hand to help them out of the car one by one.
He saw that his sisters cannot get inside the trampoline, it's too high. So he pushed all of them like one by one to get into the trampoline, and it was very sweet to watch.
The mother of 4 says she thinks her son's behavior owes to both his nature and the nurturing he's received.
No one teach them specifically to act like that, to be this way, but also he learned it from, I think, his parents, grandparents. He saw how we treat each other and being very helpful, thoughtful, compassionate.
The mother says she wants to be able to help her children be themselves. She says her family doesn't have a specific philosophy in raising children other than teaching them to be compassionate and thoughtful of others.
I try to explain them that they want to treat people the way they want to be treated as well. So if they do something, I ask them, would you like that to happen to you? If you don't do that. If you think it's a bad thing to do, it's just don't do. Always ask yourself a question. Is it a good thing or bad thing?
Brown runs an Instagram page where she posts about her 4 little children and shares Sebastian's kind gestures toward his little sisters.